The stars in the Kepler 442 system looked cold and distant as Ambassador Cathara stared out from the bridge of her ship. The Star Whisper was not a war vessel. It was built for peace talks and diplomatic missions, with smooth white walls and gentle curves that spoke of the Zephyrian way of life. Everything about her people was soft and peaceful, from their pale blue skin to their quiet voices. Cathara had spent 3 long months trying to make peace with the Corvan Federation. The talks had failed badly. The Corvans wanted war, not peace. They called the Zephyrians weak and useless. Now she was taking her small convoy of 5 ships back home to deliver the bad news to her government. The journey should have been safe. This part of space was supposed to be neutral territory. No, one was supposed to attack diplomatic ships here. But as Cathara watched the stars, she knew something was wrong. Her ship's sensors were picking up movement in the darkness ahead. "Ambassador," said Captain Yilnith from his seat at the ship's controls. His voice was shaking. "We have 12 ships coming toward us. They are moving fast." Cathara felt her heart sink. 12 ships was far too many to be a normal patrol. She moved to stand behind the captain's chair and looked at the screen showing the approaching vessels. The ships were dark and angular, built for hunting and killing. She recognized them immediately. "Vorthons," she whispered. The Vorthons were everything the Zephyrians were not. Where her people sought peace, the Vorthons brought war. Where her people built beautiful things, the Vorthons made weapons. They were tall and strong, with gray skin like stone and red eyes that burned with anger. They had been conquering worlds for over a century, turning peaceful planets into slave colonies, or burning them to ash. "Send a message to the escort ships," Cathara ordered. "Tell them to prepare for—" Her words were cut off as the space around the convoy suddenly filled with light. Bright red beams shot out from the Vorthon ships, striking the Zephyrian vessels. The energy weapons hit their shields with tremendous force. The Star Whisper shook like a leaf in a storm. "Shields are failing," Captain Yilnith called out. "We cannot take much more of this." One of the escort ships, the Moonbeam, was already in trouble. Smoke was pouring from its engines, and it was drifting helplessly through space. The other escort ships were firing back with their small defensive weapons, but their shots barely scratched the Vorthon hull armor. A new voice filled the bridge, coming through the communication system. It was deep and harsh, speaking in the common galactic language with a thick Vorthon accent. "This is Captain Vexthor of the Hunter Fleet Bloodfang. Zephyrian ships, you will surrender immediately. Lower your shields and prepare to be boarded. Resist and we will destroy you all." Cathara looked at her captain. Yilnith was a good officer, but he was not a warrior. None of them were warriors. The Zephyrians had not fought a real war in over 300 years. They had almost forgotten how to fight. "What are our options?" she asked quietly. "We have none," Yilnith replied. His voice was full of defeat. "Their ships are too strong. Our weapons are too weak. If we try to run, they will catch us. If we try to fight, they will kill us." Another escort ship, the Gentle Rain, exploded in a ball of fire and metal. The crew had been trying to use their ship as a shield to protect the others. Now they were dead, turned to atoms in the cold of space. "Send out a distress call," Cathara ordered. "All frequencies, emergency priority." "Already done, Ambassador," said the communications officer. "But the nearest friendly fleet is 6 hours away. The galactic patrol is even further. No one can reach us in time." Cathara closed her eyes and tried to think. Her people had always believed that reason and diplomacy could solve any problem. They had always believed that if you were peaceful and kind, others would be peaceful and kind in return. But the Vorthons did not care about peace or kindness. They only understood strength and fear. The Vorthon ships were moving closer now, surrounding the convoy like wolves around a wounded deer. Cathara could see the details of their hulls through the bridge windows. They were covered in scars from old battles and painted with symbols that meant death and conquest. "Zephyrian ships," Captain Vexthor's voice came again. "You have 30 seconds to surrender. After that, my hunters will take your ships by force. Your people will become slaves. Your worlds will burn. This is your only warning." "Ambassador," whispered Captain Yilnith. What do we do? Cathara felt the weight of decision crushing down on her. If she surrendered, her people would be enslaved. If she fought, they would all die. Either way, the Vorthan Empire would learn about Zephyrian space routes and colony locations. Either way, her homeworld would be in danger. She was about to give the order to surrender when the sensor officer suddenly called out, "Contact! New ship approaching from the outer system." Everyone on the bridge turned to look at the sensor display. A single ship was racing toward them at incredible speed. It was much smaller than the Vorthan hunters, but it was moving faster than anything they had ever seen. "Can you identify it?" Cathara asked. The sensor officer worked at his controls for a moment. "The energy signature is strange. The ship design is unknown." "Wait," he paused, checking his readings again. "Ambassador, I think it might be human." A human ship. Cathara had heard stories about the humans, but she had never seen one of their vessels before. They were a new species in the galaxy, having only achieved faster-than-light travel about 50 years ago. Most people said they were primitive and violent, coming from a world so dangerous that it had tried to kill them for millions of years. But what could one small human ship do against 12 Vorthan hunters? The human ship came out of the darkness like a bullet. It was not beautiful like Zephyrian vessels or scary like Vorthan hunters. It looked like a working ship, built for carrying cargo from one place to another. The hull was gray metal with patches where repairs had been made. Long scratches and burn marks showed it had seen hard use. Captain Vexthor watched the approaching vessel from his command chair aboard the Bloodfang. His red eyes narrowed as he studied the readings his officers gave him. The ship was called Iron Wolf according to its identification signal. It was registered to Earth, the human homeworld. "A human cargo ship," Vexthor said with a laugh that sounded like grinding stone. "One small freighter thinks it can challenge the Bloodfang fleet." His officers laughed too. The Vorthans had heard stories about humans, but they were not impressed. Humans were young and weak compared to the great races of the galaxy. They had only left their homeworld recently. What could they possibly know about real warfare? "Shall we destroy it now, Captain?" asked the weapons officer. "Not yet," Vexthor replied. "Let us see what this human wants. Perhaps it wishes to beg for scraps from our hunt." On the Star Whisper, Ambassador Cathara watched the human ship with growing hope and fear. Hope because any help was better than no help. Fear because she did not want more innocent beings to die for her people. "The human ship is hailing us," reported the communications officer. "Put it through," Cathara ordered. A new voice filled the bridge. It was calm and steady, speaking common galactic with a strange accent that made some words sound hard and sharp. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the independent vessel Iron Wolf, Zephyrian convoy. Are you in need of assistance?" Cathara stepped forward to answer. "Captain Morrison, this is Ambassador Cathara. We are under attack by Vorthan forces. Please do not risk your ship for us. You should leave this area immediately." There was a pause. Then the human captain spoke again, and there was something in his voice that made Cathara shiver. It was not fear or anger, it was something colder. "Understood, Ambassador, I see the situation. Give me a moment to talk to these Vorthans." Before Cathara could respond, the communication channel switched. Now Captain Morrison was speaking to the entire area, his voice reaching every ship in the system. "Vorthan vessels, this is Captain Jake Morrison of Earth. You are attacking a peaceful diplomatic convoy in neutral space. This is against galactic law. I am ordering you to cease fire and withdraw immediately." The bridge of the Bloodfang fell silent. Then Captain Vexthor began to laugh again, louder this time. "Ordering us?" he said into his communication system. "Human, you are in a cargo ship. We are 12 hunters. You will leave now or we will add your wreckage to the debris field." "I gave you a lawful order," Morrison replied, his voice still calm. "You have chosen to ignore it. That makes you pirates and criminals. Last chance to reconsider." Vexthor's laughter stopped. No one had ever spoken to him like this. Lesser races begged or ran when they saw his fleet. They did not give him orders. "You dare threaten me?" Vexthor snarled. "I am Captain Vexthor. I have conquered 12 worlds. I have burned cities and enslaved millions. What are you, human? What makes you think you can stand against the Bloodfang fleet?" The response came immediately, and it sent a chill through every being who heard it. "I am Jake Morrison, formerly of the Earth Defense Force, 7th Colonial Marines. I fought in the Titan Wars, the Europa Rebellion, and the Asteroid Belt Campaign. I have killed more enemies than you have conquered worlds. And right now, I am the only thing standing between you and a very bad day." On the Star Whisper, Ambassador Cathara felt her breath catch. She had heard whispers about human military forces. Stories said they came from a world so dangerous that everything on it tried to kill everything else. A world where the native creatures had to fight every day just to survive. But she had thought these were just stories. Captain Vexthor was no longer laughing. He had conquered many worlds, but he had never heard anyone speak with such quiet confidence. The human sounded like he was discussing the weather, not facing 12 warships. "You are one ship," Vexthor said, trying to regain his composure. "We are many. Simple mathematics, human." "You know what your problem is?" Morrison replied. "You think this is about numbers. It is not. This is about will. This is about who wants to win more. And trust me, Vorthan, you do not want this as much as I do." The Iron Wolf was closer now, and the Zephyrians could see it clearly through their windows. It did not look like much. Just a battered cargo ship with some extra equipment bolted to its hull. But something about the way it moved through space reminded Cathara of a hunting cat she had seen once in a nature documentary. Calm and patient, but ready to explode into violence. "This is your final warning," Morrison continued. "Release the Zephyrian ships and withdraw from this system. Do this now, and you can go home to tell your friends about the day you met a human, and live to talk about it." Vexthor's patience finally broke. "Destroy the human ship," he roared to his fleet. "Show this primitive what happens when someone challenges the Bloodfang." 2 of the Vorthan hunters turned toward the Iron Wolf, their weapons charging with deadly light. Energy cannons that could punch through a battleship's armor swiveled to target the small cargo vessel. But something strange happened. The Iron Wolf did not try to run. It did not try to hide. Instead, it began to change. Panels along the ship's hull slid open, revealing weapons that definitely did not belong on a cargo freighter. The ship's engine signature suddenly spiked, showing power levels that should have been impossible for a vessel that size. "What is that?" whispered Captain Yilneth. Ambassador Cathara stared at the transforming ship and finally understood. "It is not a cargo ship," she said quietly. "It was never a cargo ship." Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication channel one last time, and now it carried the promise of violence. "You had your chance, Vorthan. Now you get to learn why smart species do not pick fights with humans." The Iron Wolf shed its disguise completely, revealing itself as a warship built for one purpose: killing other ships efficiently and without mercy. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Ambassador Cathara remembered an old saying from human culture that someone had once translated for her: "Never corner something meaner than you are." The first Vorthan hunter ship fired its main cannon at the Iron Wolf. The energy beam was bright enough to blind anyone looking directly at it. It was the kind of weapon that could crack a moon in half. The beam shot across space toward the human ship. But the Iron Wolf was not there anymore. Captain Jake Morrison had thrown his ship into a spinning dive the moment he saw the Vorthan weapon charging. The energy beam passed through empty space, where his ship had been a second before. The Iron Wolf twisted and rolled like a living thing, moving in ways that should have torn it apart. "Impossible," Captain Vexthor snarled from his command chair. "No cargo ship can move like that." He was right. No cargo ship could move like that. But the Iron Wolf was not a cargo ship anymore. The fake hull panels had fallen away, showing the real ship underneath. It was lean and deadly, built for speed and killing. Every line of its design spoke of one purpose: war. Morrison's voice came over the communication channel, still calm despite the battle that had just begun. You gentlemen seem to have trouble hitting a moving target. Let me show you how it is. Done. The Iron Wolf spun around and fired back. But these were not the slow energy beams the Vorthons used. These were railguns, shooting metal slugs at incredible speed. The projectiles moved so fast they were invisible, striking the Vorthon ship before anyone could react. The hunter ship's shields flared and died. The metal slugs punched through the hull like paper, tearing into the ship's vital systems. Explosions bloomed along the vessel's length as power conduits overloaded and weapon systems failed. On the Star Whisper, Ambassador Cathara watched in amazement. "How is he doing this?" she whispered. Captain Yilnath was studying his sensor readings with wide eyes. "The human ship is using kinetic weapons, solid projectiles instead of energy beams. Our databases say this is a very old form of warfare." "Old, but effective," Cathara replied, watching the damaged Vorthon ship drift helplessly through space. The other Vorthon hunters were spreading out now, trying to surround the Iron Wolf. But Morrison was not playing their game. Instead of staying in one place like a normal ship would, he was using the debris from the battle to his advantage. The wreckage of the destroyed Zephyrian escort ship Moonbeam was floating nearby in a cloud of twisted metal. Morrison dove straight into this debris field, disappearing among the wreckage like a shark hiding in coral. "Where did he go?" demanded Vexthor. "Find him." The Vorthon sensors were having trouble tracking the human ship among all the metal debris. Their targeting systems kept locking onto pieces of wreckage instead of the real target. This was exactly what Morrison had planned. The Iron Wolf appeared suddenly from behind a large piece of debris already firing. Another Vorthon hunter took a full salvo of railgun shots to its engine section. The ship's reactor went critical, creating a ball of nuclear fire that lit up the entire system. 2 Vorthon ships destroyed in less than 5 minutes. The remaining hunters were beginning to understand that they were not fighting a normal enemy. "Captain," Vexthor was screaming orders at his remaining ships. "Concentrate fire. Box him in. Use the gravity mines." The Vorthons launched special weapons called gravity mines. These created small areas of twisted space that would crush any ship that came too close. They spread the mines around the battle zone, trying to limit where the Iron Wolf could go. But Morrison had fought against gravity mines before. He knew how they worked and how to avoid them. More importantly, he knew how to use them. The Iron Wolf came racing out of the debris field, heading straight for one of the gravity mines. The Vorthons thought he had made a mistake. They thought he was going to be crushed by his own reckless flying. At the last second, Morrison fired a spread of missiles at the mine. The explosions triggered the gravity weapon, but instead of crushing the Iron Wolf, the twisted space caught a Vorthon hunter that had been chasing him. The enemy ship was pulled into the gravity field and compressed into a ball of metal no bigger than a car. "This is impossible," Vexthor roared. "He is fighting like a madman." On the Iron Wolf's bridge, Morrison smiled grimly as he worked his controls. This was not madness. This was exactly how humans fought when they had to. They used everything around them as a weapon. They turned their enemies' strength against them. They did not follow the rules of civilized warfare because sometimes being civilized meant dying. Another Vorthon ship tried to ram the Iron Wolf, hoping to destroy both vessels in the collision. Morrison waited until the last possible moment, then fired his engines at full power. The Iron Wolf shot forward just as the Vorthon ship passed through the space where he had been. But Morrison had left a present behind. A single missile, launched at point-blank range, struck the Vorthon ship's hull. The explosion broke the vessel's back, sending both halves spinning away into space. 4 Vorthon ships destroyed. 8 remaining, but the Iron Wolf was not undamaged. Energy beams had scorched its hull. One of its railguns was offline. The ship's shields were failing. Morrison opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian convoy. "Ambassador Cathara, I need you to do something for me." "Anything, Captain Morrison," she replied immediately. "I need you to trust me, and I need your people to be ready to fight." Ambassador Cathara felt her heart sink. "Captain, my people are not warriors. We do not know how to fight. You are about to learn," Morrison said grimly, "because the only way we all get out of this alive is if we work together. And I am going to teach you something the Vorthans do not understand. What is that? Desperate people are the most dangerous people in the galaxy. And right now, we are all very desperate. The Iron Wolf spun around and fired everything it had at the nearest Vorthan ship. Railguns, missiles, and energy weapons lit up space with deadly light. The Vorthan hunter exploded in a cascade of fire. 5 down, 7 to go. But Morrison was not done yet. He had one more trick to show the Vorthans, something that would teach them why humans were feared by those who knew them. He was going to show them what happened when you cornered something that had evolved to fight for its life every single day. All Vorthan ships, Morrison broadcast on all frequencies. You want to know what makes humans special? We do not know how to quit. We do not know how to surrender. And we definitely do not know how to lose. The Iron Wolf dove toward the center of the Vorthan formation, all weapons firing, ready to take as many enemies with it as possible. The real battle was just beginning. The Iron Wolf raced through the middle of the Vorthan formation with every weapon firing. Energy beams and railgun shots filled the space around it. Morrison was not trying to escape anymore. He was hunting. Another Vorthan ship tried to get behind him, but Morrison had anticipated this. He cut his engines and let momentum carry him forward while spinning his ship around. Now he was flying backward but still shooting forward. The surprised Vorthon pilot flew straight into Morrison's line of fire. The enemy ship's bridge exploded under the railgun barrage. Without anyone to pilot it, the vessel drifted helplessly through space, its crew dead or dying. 6 Vorthon ships destroyed. 6 remaining. Captain Vexthor was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. This human was not just lucky or reckless. He was a professional killer who knew exactly what he was doing. Every move was calculated. Every shot was placed with precision. All ships fall back and regroup, Vexthor ordered. Do not engage the human alone. But Morrison was not going to let them regroup. He opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian convoy, while dodging another volley of enemy fire. Ambassador Kithara, are you listening? Yes, Captain Morrison, came the reply from the Star Whisper. Good. I need you to do exactly what I tell you. Your ship still has power, right? Some power, yes, but our weapons are mostly offline. Forget the weapons, Morrison said as he rolled his ship under a Vorthan energy beam. We are going to turn your ship into something better than a weapon. Ambassador Kithara felt confused. I do not understand. Your ship has a reactor, correct? And you can overload it? Captain Yilnith spoke up from his position at the controls. Yes, but that would destroy the ship, and us with it. Not if you do it right, Morrison replied. Listen carefully. I am going to guide you through something called a controlled reactor breach. You are going to turn your ship into a bomb. The Zephyrian bridge fell silent. Ambassador Kithara felt her heart racing. Captain Morrison, we are not warriors. We cannot do this. Yes, you can, Morrison said firmly, because you are not doing this as warriors. You are doing this as people who want to go home, people who want to see their families again, people who refuse to let bullies win. While he spoke, Morrison was still fighting. The Iron Wolf twisted between 2 Vorthan ships, firing at both of them simultaneously. One ship lost its main gun, the other lost its engine. Here is what you do, Morrison continued, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. Yilnith, reroute all power to your main reactor. When I give the signal, shut down the containment field for exactly 3 seconds, then bring it back online. That will create a massive energy pulse, Yilnith said, understanding beginning to dawn on him. Exactly. Aim that pulse at the nearest Vorthan ship. The energy wave will fry their electronics and leave them helpless. Ambassador Kithara looked around her bridge at her crew. They were all looking back at her, waiting for her decision. These were not soldiers. They were diplomats and scientists and engineers. But they were also people who had families to protect. Do it, she ordered. Meanwhile, Morrison was putting on a display of flying that defied belief. He was using the gravity of nearby asteroids to slingshot his ship in impossible directions. He was using the exhaust from his own engines to blind enemy sensors. He was even using pieces of destroyed ships as shields. The Vorthons had never seen anything like it. They were trained to fight other civilized species who followed predictable patterns of warfare. But humans did not follow patterns. They adapted constantly, using anything and everything as a weapon. "Now, Ambassador," Morrison called out. On the Star Whisper, Captain Yilnith shut down the reactor containment field. Energy poured out of the ship in a brilliant wave of light. The pulse struck a nearby Vorthon hunter, overloading every electronic system on board. The enemy ship went dark, drifting helplessly through space. "It worked," Cathara gasped. "Good job," Morrison replied. "Now do it again. Target the ship on your left." As the Zephyrians prepared for another energy pulse, Morrison was dealing with his own problems. The remaining Vorthon ships were trying to box him in, using coordinated attacks to limit his movement. But Morrison had one more surprise for them. He began broadcasting on all Vorthon frequencies, filling their communication channels with noise. But it was not random noise. It was human music. Specifically, it was the war songs that human soldiers had sung for thousands of years. The effect on the Vorthons was immediate and terrifying. The music was wild and primal, full of drums and shouting voices. It spoke of battles fought in dark, places of warriors who would rather die than surrender. It was the sound of a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain on a world that tried to kill everything. Captain Vexthor tried to shut off his communication system, but Morrison had jammed the controls. The human war songs filled the bridge of every Vorthon ship, getting into the minds of warriors who had thought they knew what fear was. "What is this noise?" demanded one of Vexthor's officers. "It is psychological warfare," Vexthor replied, but his voice was shaking. "The human is trying to break our spirits." And it was working. The Vorthon pilots were making mistakes, hesitating at crucial moments. The music was reminding them of every story they had ever heard about humans. Stories about a species that came from a death world. Stories about creatures that fought their own planet for millions of years and won. Morrison used their confusion to his advantage. The Iron Wolf struck like lightning, destroying another crippled Vorthon ship with a perfectly placed missile strike. 7 ships destroyed. 5 remaining. The Star Whisper fired another energy pulse, disabling a second Vorthon hunter. Now there were only 4 enemy ships left that could still fight. "Captain Morrison," Ambassador Cathara called over the communication system. "What do we do now?" Morrison's reply was grim, but determined. "Now we finish this, and we make sure the survivors remember what happens when you attack peaceful people." The Iron Wolf turned toward the remaining Vorthon ships, all weapons ready. But Morrison was not done teaching lessons yet. He was about to show them the most important thing about humans. They never gave up. No matter how bad things looked, no matter how many enemies they faced, humans kept fighting until the very end. And sometimes, just sometimes, that was enough to win. The final phase of the battle was about to begin. The 4 remaining Vorthon ships pulled back to form a defensive line. Captain Vexthor was no longer thinking about conquest or glory. He was thinking about survival. Half of his fleet was destroyed or disabled by a single human and some peaceful aliens who had learned to fight in the space of minutes. "All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel," Vexthor ordered. "Ignore the Zephyrians, the human is the real threat." But Morrison was not going to make it easy for them. The Iron Wolf was darting between the disabled Vorthon ships, using them as cover. Every time the enemy tried to get a clear shot, Morrison would duck behind another piece of wreckage. "You cannot hide forever, human," Vexthor broadcast on all frequencies. Morrison's reply came back immediately, and there was something like laughter in his voice. "Who says I am hiding? I am hunting." The Iron Wolf suddenly shot out from behind a drifting Vorthon hulk, all weapons firing. But instead of targeting the ships, Morrison was aiming at something else. His railgun struck the reactor of one of the disabled Vorthon vessels. The explosion was enormous. The chain reaction tore through the ship's hull and spread to 2 other, nearby wrecks. In seconds, the space between the Iron Wolf and the remaining Vorthon ships was filled with expanding balls of nuclear fire. When the light faded, Morrison was gone again. But now the Vorthons were blind, their sensors overloaded by the radiation from the explosions. "Where is he?" Vexthor demanded. The answer came in the form of missiles striking his ship from below. Morrison had used the explosion as cover to get underneath the Vorthan formation. Now he was attacking from an angle they had not expected. The Bloodfang shuddered under the impact, but its heavy armor held. Vexthor smiled grimly. His flagship was the strongest ship in the fleet. It would take more than a few missiles to destroy it, but Morrison was not trying to destroy the Bloodfang yet. He had other plans. Ambassador Kethera, Morrison called over the communication system. I need you to do one more thing for me. What is it, Captain? Came the reply from the Star Whisper. Take your ship and ram the Vorthan vessel on the right, full speed. There was silence on the communication channel. Then Ambassador Kethera spoke, her voice steady despite the fear she must have been feeling. Captain Morrison, that will destroy our ship. We will all die. No, you will not, Morrison replied. Trust me. I have a plan. Captain Yilnith spoke up from his position at the controls. Ambassador, our ship is not built for ramming attacks. We are not warriors. Today you are, Morrison said firmly. Today you are people who refuse to be victims. Today you are heroes. Ambassador. Kethera looked around her bridge one more time. Her crew was looking back at her with fear and determination in their eyes. They were diplomats and scientists, but they were also people who wanted to go home. Do it, she ordered. The Star Whisper turned toward the nearest Vorthan ship and began to accelerate. The enemy vessel saw them coming and tried to move away, but it was too damaged to maneuver quickly. Just before the collision, Morrison struck. The Iron Wolf appeared from nowhere, firing everything it had at the space between the two ships. The explosion threw both vessels off course, but the Star Whisper still struck the Vorthan ship a glancing blow. The impact tore through both hulls, but Morrison had calculated it perfectly. The Zephyrian ship was damaged, but not destroyed. The Gari Vorthan ship was not so lucky. The collision had ruptured its main reactor. The enemy vessel exploded in a ball of fire, taking another ship with it. 2 more Vorthan ships destroyed. Only 2 left. But Captain Vexthor was not finished yet. Seeing his fleet destroyed around him had driven him into a rage. The Bloodfang turned toward the damaged Star Whisper, preparing to ram the Zephyrian ship and destroy it completely. If I am going to die, Vexthor snarled, I will take some of you with me. The massive Vorthan flagship accelerated toward the helpless Zephyrian vessel. Ambassador Kethera watched death approaching through her bridge windows and felt strangely calm. She had done her duty. She had fought back against the bullies. But Morrison was not going to let her die. The Iron Wolf threw itself between the 2 ships, taking the full force of the collision. The impact nearly tore the human vessel in half, but Morrison had one last surprise. As the ships crashed together, he triggered every explosive device on his ship. The combined explosion destroyed both the Iron Wolf and the Bloodfang in a burst of light that could be seen from 3 star systems away. Captain Vexthor and his flagship were gone, turned to atoms in the cold of space. Ambassador Kethera stared at the expanding cloud of debris where the brave human had sacrificed himself to save her people. Tears ran down her face as she realized that Jake Morrison was dead. But then her communication officer called out in excitement. Ambassador, I am receiving a signal. From where? She asked. From an escape pod. Someone survived the explosion. A small pod was drifting away from the wreckage, its emergency beacon flashing. Ambassador Kethera smiled through her tears as Morrison's voice came over the communication system. This is Captain Morrison. Sorry about the fireworks, but that seemed like the best way to deal with the situation. Anyone need a ride home? The last 2 Vorthan ships, seeing their commander dead and their fleet destroyed, turned and fled into deep space. They would carry word of this battle back to their empire. They would tell stories about the day a single human and some peaceful aliens destroyed an entire hunter fleet. As rescue ships arrived to help the survivors, Ambassador Kethera spoke privately with Morrison over a secure channel. Captain, how can we ever thank you? She asked. You do not need to thank me, Morrison replied. You just need to remember something. Bullies only win when good people do nothing. Today you proved that even peaceful people can fight when they have to. Will we see you again? Kethera asked. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Maybe. The galaxy is a big place, but it is also getting smaller. Humans are spreading out, exploring new worlds, meeting new people. Some of us are traders, some are explorers, and some of us are people like me. What kind of person are you, Captain Morrison? I am the kind of person who shows up when someone calls for help. I am the kind of person who believes that bullies should not be allowed to win. And I am the kind of person who will always answer a distress call no matter how dangerous it might be. Morrison paused, then continued. Tell your people something for me, Ambassador. Tell them that humans do not abandon their friends. Tell them that if they ever need help again, all they have to do is call. We will come. As the rescue fleet escorted the survivors to safety, word of the battle began to spread throughout the galaxy. The story grew with each telling, but the basic facts remained the same. A single human had appeared when peaceful aliens were in danger. He had fought impossible, odds and won. He had taught the victims to fight back against their oppressors. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, other humans were listening to the story and nodding in approval. The galaxy was about to learn what Earth had known for millions of years. Never pick a fight with something that evolved to survive on a death world. And never, ever threaten someone a human has decided to protect. The message had been sent. The response was coming.